Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. The world around us brings to us a lot of noise. And social media has done some good to our Christian society, but it has done a lot of damage, and it has weakened our faith. We now today need to filter out the words that we see and hear. But I would like to ask you the one question that marks who you are. When you sin, who do you go to? Do you go to the person that you injured? Do you go to the person that you stole from? When you are tempted to sin, to give up, who do you proclaim will help you? And it's many times the words of Joseph that ring in my ears. And it made Joseph who he was. And you can have that same authority, that same passion, that same realization. When Joseph, the two scriptures that I think of is the moment when Joseph was confronted with the beautiful woman, and she was presenting herself to him. He first of all reminded her that, she belongs to the owner of the home. But he asked the question, he said, how can I do this great sin before my God? Yeah. How can we do this sin before our God? The second time that I am reminded of the scripture of who we are is when Joseph's brothers were standing in front of him, unawares of who he was. He told them, and then he said, now don't be angry at yourselves, because God meant it to reserve life. I would have to turn to that to get the exact. The meaning was that you guys meant it for evil. You sold me, and your intentions was evil. But God took that moment and He used it for God's kingdom. These are the thoughts and the meditations of Joseph that kept him faithful throughout his many many closed doors, many losses, many separations, relationships broken. These scriptures, this thought, this mindset is what kept Joseph faithful, and he had integrity. He persevered. And my question to you this morning is, who are you? Are you pushed by your friends? Or do you walk, God is my God, and I don't care what you say. I am pushing through. That was Joseph. We have our times of disappointment, closed doors. And as I started Genesis 37, where Joseph was around 16, 17, when I think that's about the calculation, I think even the scripture says, yes, Genesis 37:2 says, Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock of his brothers. So at 17, there was things that his father had done before that. But at 17, things began to go south. The doors were closed. He was dreaming, possibly, of taking over a small flock and growing it into a large kingdom. But that door was closed. I'm sure that he was contemplating a good relationship with his family, with his parents. That door was closed. And then he was presented with an opportunity that many 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds struggle with. But he said no. And he went to prison on false charges. Some of us went to prison with charges that, and some of us maybe should spend a little time in prison. But Joseph knew who his God was. Do you know who your God is? It makes all the difference. It makes all the difference. When we lose opportunities, when doors are closed. And as I was preparing for this, I couldn't help but think of Gloria and her passing. If you knew Gloria, she would speak many times of coming out of the ashes. She knew what personal failure was. And she also knew who God was. And then as I thought about that, of Gloria's departure, and I want to be careful how I present this thought. There is a proper time for grieving. And I don't know when Joseph grieved his different losses. But let's get back to Gloria, and we can feel a personal experience with grieving. How many of you did a dance of joy when you heard that Gloria went to heaven? Those of us who knew her well, we were sad. But I believe that humanity has conditioned us, and the world around us has conditioned us to think negative of death. Death is loss. And, okay, it is loss. But it is beyond our comprehension. It is beyond our human imagination what those who pass over the threshold of life and into eternity in heaven, we do not comprehend or understand what they meet and embrace. And I believe that if we would know and understand the impact and the glory and the presence that we meet, we would think differently about death. Joseph, I'm sure, grieved many a time as he was being transported by the camels, by the guards into prison. But I believe because he knew who God was and the God he serves, his time of grieving and lamenting and accusing was very little. And this is who we can become. This is the person you can become. How? By understanding who you serve and understanding God. Joseph said to his brothers, "Don't be angry with yourselves, because God sent you." And that was in Genesis 45:5. God sent you. When we have doors that are closing, we have relationships that are closing, we get discouraged. Yesterday, was one of those days for me. I am a little bit of a electronic fanatic. So I'm determined to build a strawberry picker. Well, I purchased myself a robot just to get to understand how programming is done. And I got, so far, I got the robot to pick up a brick and replace it over here. But now this brick needs to move. And no, the robot didn't do that. And I came up against a brick wall. And it was, no, the door closed. And as I did research, I realized, and I knew this, but I didn't know it. I knew that it was difficult to train a robot to pick up a moving object. But I'm still determined to do it. But that door closed, and it was difficult. How do I push through this? Well, there's a few things that I needed to recognize and to come to grips with. This isn't the end of my life. My world doesn't stop here. Even though the strawberry picker has been in my brain for quite a while, it probably won't die right away. I know that God is here and God is with me. He may open a door to make this robot work correctly and to do, or I may find another way to harvest strawberries automatically. What did Joseph do when he sat in the prison cell after the party after the dreams that the butler and the baker and those guys were released from prison and they went back to their job? And they forgot him? What did Joseph do? Did he poop? Did he cry? Did he just give up on life and say, well, the door is shut again? No. He believed that there would be an opportunity. He did not know what opportunity, but he believed that there would be an opportunity. Why? Because he knew the God he served was loyal and faithful to his people. And he will not forget that. And lo and behold, one day, the need came for Joseph. The butler and the baker remembered that dreamer and that young man who was a pleasure to and a delight to be around, even when he was in prison, even when the doors were shut and he didn't have opportunity. He was a pleasure to be around. Are you, when the doors are closed? We need to embrace the closed doors because they always open up new ones. When you look at Daniel, when he was taken out of his land and taken into another country, you take Ruth, you take David. They had a lot of doors that were closed. But there was one thing that they knew. And that was who their God is. I want you as people, as my brothers, as my sisters, I want you to believe in appropriate times. But I want you to move forward with a passion and with energy in spite of closed doors, closed relationships. I want you to move forward because I know you can. I know you can. And I believe that you will when you realize that the God of this heaven is your daddy and he pursues you and he wants you. I don't know that there is as much beauty. Beauty isn't the right word, I understand that. When you see a person struggling in life, and they continue to push forward, there is something that is invigorating about that person. There is something that when you see a person who is struggling and they push forward and they greet you with a smile, it's not the dancing jig smile, but it's a smile that I got it. There is beauty in the character of such a person that is not put on the outside, on the face, on the body. But there is beauty in observing and watching people push through hard times. John 11, 25 and 26. I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Revelation 21, 4. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. James 1, 2. And this is where I believe that Joseph did well. Consider it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Count it joy. And some people will say that the trial is temptation. It could be. And closed doors creates a lot of temptations. When our business comes up against the brick wall and it just stops, and we can't push it. You're tempted to do some things that may not be kosher. But the scriptures tell us, consider that testing joyful. What does it do? It creates the ability for you to be a person of integrity. A person that can walk in life facing hardship, facing the storms, and you just move through. In my life, I've had a lot of horses. And as people, there are all shapes and sizes and attitudes and personalities, if you want to call it that, temperaments. And you have horses that will run like the wind, and you will have horses that will jump through fire. But those horses that jump through fire need to trust their rider. If you're riding with a group of people And there's this one horse that doesn't want to cross the river, doesn't want to walk over the bridge. It means one thing, is that the owner did not spend enough time with that horse. He doesn't trust it. That horse doesn't trust the owner or his rider. Humans are a lot the same. I don't like to give you the picture that God is your rider, but I will give you the picture that God is your king. How can you trust him when you don't know him? Or when you haven't spent much time with him? As a horse and a rider, you need to spend time with that horse. And they will bond with you. And they will do what you ask them to do, not because you force them, but because they trust you that where you ask them to step, that it's okay. And I want to reassure you that just like Joseph, just like God placed Joseph in the prison, in another country. Why? It was to preserve people. It was to preserve Jacob and his family. If Joseph would have said no way and would have been kicking and bucking the whole way through life, I doubt if the king or the pharaohs at that time would have given him the opportunity to be responsible for the grain bins and to provide in the years of plenty and to build. But Joseph was calm and he was collected and he was a pleasure. And he knew who God was. Second Corinthians 4, please. Therefore we do not lose heart, but though our outer person is decaying, yet our inner person is being renewed day by day. For our momentary light affliction is producing for us an eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison. While we look not at the things which are seen, but the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. What you are going through today is very temporal. The closed doors, closed relationships, and you can push through when you know who your daddy is. When you know who your God is. How can we be like Joseph? How can we live a disciplined life with integrity, with perseverance, faithfulness, whatever comes our way? It's by knowing who your daddy is.